Mark Thompson Show.
This guy, I almost wasn't going to have him on because he was on yesterday and he was terrific yesterday. If you haven't heard it or you missed it for some reason, I do encourage you going back. We posted it as a separate video.
Oh, something I did right then. Look at that. What?
Well, it was really more Avila. Actually, you were really great with Jim too. You asked some great questions and follow-ups and stuff.
Avila.
So
yeah, he's good.
How about he's the award-winning journalist, the former senior correspondent at ABC News, covered the White House for years. He's Jim Avila, everybody. Good morning, sir. Yeah. So now you write this column on media and politics, and it couldn't be more of the moment. As I believe, and I was saying before, I think the media carried the water of Donald Trump all the way to the White House in the last election. And I feel the media is falling into the same trap. Your latest column suggests similarly. I wonder if you could speak to it, please.
Well, the false equivalency, Mark, of course, is what we've always been having a trouble with, and you've been talking about it. And what I start out the column with is what happened in Michigan, where the New York Times, the NBC News, they all big headlines saying Donald Trump and President Biden go to Michigan to support auto workers. Well, that's not really true. Joe Biden went and walked the picket line, the first president ever, an historic move. Donald Trump brought some of his campaign workers and followers into a non-union plant, gave them signs that said they were auto workers. But when the local news, it was the Detroit Press who actually exposed this, went and asked these people, which auto plant do you work at? He said, I don't work at I'm not an auto worker. He has no scruples whatsoever. And then he went, of course, and his whole reason for going was to attack electric vehicles. And as you point out, at an electric vehicle, I think it was a battery plant, where they actually
make the batteries that go in the cars.
Yeah, they either, I don't know that they make the batteries there, but they have something to do with the batteries, because most of the batteries are made out of the country.
Right.
So he, excuse me.
We'll both, go ahead, you cough, and I'm going to also have a sip of water. It's that kind of day.
Yeah. So, that was the first thing. And then, you and I were talking about this along with some other friends of ours who are journalists, about how some people believe that we should just ignore Donald Trump. We're tired of it. We're tired of the crap. We're tired of the lies. Why give him any oxygen? That's a point of view that I understand, but I profoundly disagree with. And here's why. If you just allow him a platform on his echo chambers and his echo chamber, that's not going to affect the general election. There's a general election coming up after these primaries, and people are not paying attention. They won't pay attention until then. You have to keep pushing him because of the independents. Keep countering him because of independents who are some may not even be decided yet. They may think back. They may go to the grocery store, or go to the gas. They got that gas price in their face every day, and they may waver and decide they're going to vote for Donald Trump because of gas prices, which really have nothing to do with the president. But we need to keep reminding them of what an evil, destructive, treasonous person this is. And he has gone off the edge. Where he went to the bottom, of course, was in attacking Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul, during one of his speeches, where he said, how's he doing? We haven't heard much about him, have we? Blah, blah, blah. They didn't put a very good wall around his house, did they? Joking about, when we've seen this before with him, he joked, of course, about the person who was the reporter who had some disability. Sure. He did that. He continues to be the pond scum of politics, and we have to continue to bring that out because, as I say, and I'm stealing this from somebody. I think I'm trying to remember who said this. I thought either Mark Twain or somebody like that said, light is the best disinfectant. And you have to put a light on the things that he's saying in order to let people know what's going on. You can't ignore it, even though it's tempting to ignore it. And that's the point of my column.
I let me ask you about this ignoring it thing, because you just talked about the fact that we saw him mock a disabled journalist, and we do hear some of these incendiary remarks that he makes. So he's not completely ignored in that way, at least in those two instances. Is there some context that you feel is not being provided? Now, I mean, I think the case of the auto workers is just jumped out at me. It was such BS, and NPR carried it the same way. They carried it like, they both, I mean, I'm thinking, is there nobody in the world of journalism that will explain, or it's so easy. One guy's at a union, as you say, historic move to walk the picket line. The other guy's with non-union workers, and it's a photo op. It's theater. Apart from that, some of these other incendiary remarks, like the ones he made in front of the courthouse yesterday, when he's essentially, he's flame throwing toward the judge and the prosecutor. How else is there a way to cover Trump and contextualize this, Jim? Is that what you're calling for?
Well, yes, I am. I'm also recommending that mainstream media. So the instances you've been talking about, the only one that really made CBS, NBC, and ABC evening newscast was when he went after Mark Milley, the Joint Chief of Staff, the chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, when he called for his murder, essentially, and said he was treasonous. Then they jumped on board. Most of these other things we're only hearing about on the internet, on Twitter, and X or whatever it's called. And that's not enough, because all that is a few lines. What we really need is for it to be examined on our cable outlets and in the newspapers. There should be, the New York Times should have dissected what those events in Michigan really were, and they didn't. So what we're getting is this superficial, repeat of what he's saying, and not the ability to put it in context, which is what it needs to be done. And do we need to do them all? Maybe not all, but a lot of them. And yesterday was a good case in point. And the cables did it right in most cases yesterday. So when he came out of the court and he was bashing the judge, they didn't carry it live. Fox carried it live, but nobody else. And they took it, they analyzed what he was saying, they played it, and then their panels went off on him and what he was saying, and their legal experts went off on what he was saying. That's the way we've got to do it. And I guess what I'm just worried about, we have a very good friend who's a local anchor in Los Angeles, and we love him, and he's a smart guy. But when we were talking about this, his thing was, the audience is tired of it. It's not news anymore, because he's saying the same kind of crazy things. And there's some of that in the news media that are thinking that, and that's just wrong. And he's now come around and realizes, now that we've pointed out why that's so wrong.
Yeah.
And I even say, I believe, and I know it's a serious thing, and you don't bring up the Holocaust, and you don't bring up what happened in Nazi Germany lightly. You just don't do it. But I don't hesitate in saying, if we don't speak up, if the media doesn't speak up, if the public doesn't speak up, and does not lose interest in Donald Trump saying these crazy things, we're going to be regretful, just like the Germans are today. When, just after the World War II, the Germans the light was held up to them, and they were sorry, and we didn't know, and we didn't realize what was going on, and all these things. When it's not true, they did know what was going on, they ignored it. And we're doing the same thing with Donald Trump, and we can't do that.
Now, remind, just because you mention it, that was a minority group. I mean, the Third Reich rose with a minority. So the idea is somehow, well, they're a bunch of crazies. It's only a third of the country, as you've mentioned before. Those followers are immovable, but you can have awful things happen without the majority being part of the awfulness. So, great stuff in this column. And when it comes to covering Trump, look, to me, the election and discussions around politics, it all has to do with media. It all has to do with coverage. Television, internet, clicks, Facebook, in the new age, all of these different information streams, it all has to do with it. And the reason I like that you focus on some of these things like newspapers and cable TV is because that crew, the demographics on that, again, I understand the audience has been attenuated and they're ending up in all of these other places that I mentioned, but those mainstream viewers and readers, they're older people. Right? We grew up with that stuff, the paper and with a lot of this cable news. We tend to vote. And so the information we get is important. So I love that you have singled them out and that you continue to identify these issues because, again, it's all about media. You will vote based on the information you're getting. And if it's recharacterized in some kind of normal way, or in the case of that UAW strike, I mean, were there any apologies or corrections issued in the UAW? I don't think so. We incorrectly...
No, I think they just eventually
got to it.
Caught up and reported that that's what happened. But the initial things, the initial reports, the ones that people look at the first time, and that frequently the first impression is what you're left with.
Sure.
Was that these were equal, and this was just a couple of guys going out there and campaigning, which was not true.
Jim, love that you're such a big part of the show this week. This is kind of cool. Thank you for being available. We'll talk to you on Friday, which is your normal day, and we'll go over the week's events, and there's a lot of it. So, Jim Avila, everybody, we'll post your column on our website. See you.
Thank you.
In the description, yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.